Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. Today I thought I would discuss some of my top tips for panning, specifically eyeshadows. I've gotten a lot of questions about how I pan on things so quickly and how I'm managing to just like go through my eyeshadows so quickly, and I thought I would discuss this today. So if you're interested in learning more about that, please stay tuned. But before I jump into any of my tips, if you're new here, please consider subscribing. I would love to have you in the family. But let's just jump into tip number one. So I really hope I haven't forgotten any tips, but I had a little think, and I think these are the main tips that I go through or that I use in order to hit pan on things so quickly. So the first one I'm going to start with is to basically, I mean this is kind of self-explanatory, but it's to layer shades and use as many shades in each look as possible. So when I do eyeshadows, I normally use around 8 to 9 shades each day. I don't necessarily all use them on my eyes, I'm gonna get to that in a second, but I use around that number every single day. And obviously the more shades you use each day, the more likely you are to pan on more eyeshadows, because obviously, like, let's say you only wear like 3 eyeshadows each day rather than 9, then it will take you 3 days to use as much eyeshadow as you do in one day, if that makes sense. I mean, it's not completely mathematical, because obviously if you're only using 1 crease shade, you might use that more than maybe if you use 2 crease shades, but overall you get more use out of your eyeshadows doing it that way. Like for example, today in today's look I'm using 8 shades, which I mean, that's, like I said, it's kind of average for me, but sometimes I use more than that, but that's what I'm using today, for example. So it's a lot of kind of layering and just building shades, and that would be my tip number one. My second tip would be to really pack on the shades on your eyes. If you do want to pan a lot of shades or like hit pan on eyeshadows quickly, you do need to kind of pack on eyeshadows rather than doing a light wash, because obviously then you use more. So that's what I do. I like my intense eye looks. Even for every day now, I kind of like packing things on and then blending them out. And if I want to make something lighter, I, for example, take a skin tone colored shade, like a base shade, and I blend out the edges that way. Because I don't set my eyelids, so that's another, I guess, tip, but it's not technically a tip because you can definitely do this even if you set your eyelids. But I don't set my eyelids, so I just pack on the color and then blend it out and diffuse it, and I feel like that really works for me. And yeah, I feel like that would be a really good tip if you do want to hit pan on things quicker, because if you pack on things, like for mattes, for example, I stamp them on and I really build up the color, especially when I do color for looks like this. I really build on the color. Like today's look, for example, you can see the kind of lilac shade I have, or like the pink shade I have on top of my crease. I packed that on all over my crease, like quite intensely at first, and then I took the same shade on a fluffy brush and I just blended out the edges, and then I added that kind of I guess like more kind of lilac blue shade underneath it, on top of it, used to kind of create that gradient. But that way I got a lot of use out of that pinkier shade instead of just using that to blend out, and also I feel like it makes my eye looks more intense. So, and for example, when it comes to shimmers, I take my brush and I really pack it on the brush. So I kind of like, I don't dig in my shadows, but I kind of swipe it back and forth until I have quite a lot of eyeshadow on my brush. And then I always wet it just to help with fallout, because I feel like if I spray it with some, I used to use water, to be honest. If I spray it with some water, I don't get nearly as much fallout. So that's kind of what I do for my lid, and that makes the shimmer really intense. The shade I'm wearing on my eyes today though is a liquid eyeshadow, so it doesn't really apply, but I feel like it does work really well for shimmers. For example, the inner corner shade I did that with today. So obviously doing that, you do get kind of more color payoff, but you do also use more of your eyeshadow. So that probably is one of my number one tips to do, is just to pack on the eyeshadows, because you do use more eyeshadow that way and you will hit pan faster. So tip number 3 kind of goes hand in hand with that, and that is to use firm brushes. So for example, that packing, like that initial packing of mattes, I don't do it always with my transition shade, because especially when I do like more everyday looks, I just kind of use that as a watercolor in the crease. But every outer corner shade, if I want to like deepen up the crease, I always use a denser brush, because it does pick up more product, but it also gives that intensity that I want in my looks, so that really helps. And when it comes to kind of the shimmer shade on my lid, I again use kind of like a denser shader brush to pick that up. For example, I really enjoy the brushes on the Anastasia double-ended sides. blending brush, sometimes I like it, sometimes it can be too scratchy, but the actually packing brush on there is really good, and it's actually one of my favorites. So something like that is the type of brush that I use to pick up shimmers. And again, using a firmer brush just means that you can kind of really like narrow down where you put your brush in the pan, and it will pick up more product, but it also will make it more intense on your eyes. So that kind of goes hand in hand with my previous tip, but it's another one that I really enjoy and will make you again hit pan on things faster. The next tip is something that I kind of already covered, but it's just to do bolder looks. If you're a person who just likes a really light wash of color and a light wash of shimmer, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But if you really want to hit pan on something quickly, you probably would have to build up your shades a bit more, if that makes sense. I used to do like super light eyeshadow looks. I never really wore eyeshadow. I was more into lips. I wore really bold lips and used like super light eyeshadows, and that's what I used to do, like what is it now, like 5, 6, 7 years ago. But I have definitely changed my makeup aesthetic since then, and I think starting at Panning Eyeshadows has really helped with that. Because I feel like before then I was dabbling into eyeshadow a bit, but since starting with Panning Eyeshadows I really started my creativity up, and I really love making eyeshadow looks. For example, like the one I'm wearing today, where it's more intense and bold, and I do obviously use way more eyeshadow this way than if I did like a really light wash of lilac in the crease and then like a light shimmer on the lid. So that is definitely something that you could consider if you do want to hit pan on things quicker. It's not for everyone, so I'm not gonna go out and say do it, because it does really depend on what your makeup style is, but I'm not gonna lie, it does make a huge difference if you do want to hit pan on things quickly to do more bolder eye looks, because you do use more product that way. And obviously again, that also means that you will hit pan on things in less uses, because again, you do use more eyeshadow in each use rather than over kind of a longer period of time. So for example, someone who does light eyeshadow looks might take like 40, 50 uses to hit pan on a shade, whereas someone who does like bolder looks maybe only takes like 20 uses or even less, depending on who you are. But it does depend and it does help, but I think that's why I hit pan on things so quickly, obviously in combination with some of the other tips that I have today. Another one that I think is kind of obvious, and I feel like a lot of people do anyway if you try to pan on eyeshadows, is to put your brush in the same spot of the eyeshadow every single time. Another thing that I haven't covered is to use brushes instead of your fingers, because if you use your fingers you're not going to pick up as much, but it kind of goes back to the whole thing of like packing on shades and like really foiling them and stuff, because I feel like if you use your fingers it doesn't always, it depends on the format obviously, but it doesn't always give the same impact, but you do also use way less if you use your fingers. So if you are very conscious about hitting panning eyeshadows quickly or panning in general, then using a brush is probably better, mainly for shimmer shades, because I think most people use brushes for the matte, but I'm talking specifically shimmer shades. But also, like I said, just putting your brush in the same spot every single time. I never really dig in my eyeshadows, I just kind of focus it on the same spot, and that is another reason obviously why I hit pan so quickly. And also it's kind of nice because then you know that even if you hit pan you still have a lot of eyeshadow around it. It's not like you used up half of the eyeshadow to hit pan, you just kind of went in the same spot, so you have a lot of eyeshadow around it, if that makes sense. So it's something that's really nice, and it also really took away from the whole like being scared of hitting pan on things and running out of eyeshadows, because I know that I still have a lot of eyeshadow despite hitting pan. Another thing that I do that again isn't for everyone, it depends on how your collection looks, but for me my biggest problem areas in my collection is mainly eyeshadows as well as lipsticks and lip products. But what I do with my eyeshadows is I multitask them. So for example today I said that I was wearing 8 shades and 3 of those shades are actually not on my eyes. So I am wearing an eyeshadow as my highlighter today. I'm also wearing 2 shades in my brows, and that's kind of what I do for my brows anyway. Every day I like having eyeshadows in my brows, but using eyeshadows in different locations could really help as well to hit pan. Those 2 locations are probably the easiest ones when it comes to hitting pan, because you do use smaller brushes. For my highlighter, for example, I actually use like, it's quite a big blending brush for your eyes, but that's what I use. So I don't use like a big highlighting brush. I use technically an eye brush, but it does mean that I get quite a narrow area when I pick up the eyeshadow or highlighter, but it also means that I have more precision when I put it on my cheekbones. And that obviously in the combination of using a small eyebrow brush is the 2 kind of smallest brushes and like more dedicated areas. Again, comes back to like to put your brush in the same area when you try to pan, because it does help. So I think those two are probably the top two areas I would say to use eyeshadows elsewhere. But obviously you can also use it as mainly blush. I would say bronzer would probably be difficult because it might be a bit too pigmented, but blush you could definitely do, especially if you're very kind of gentle and not picking up too much. But it's just something to think about if you really do want to get use out of your eyeshadow collection, and it's something that I do, especially for example the See with my Panda palette. That is where all of these 3 shades comes from, and it's just a palette that works really well for that, and it means that I can use up those shades quicker. Another one that is kind of obvious and goes back to what I started with, the first tip that I had, which was layer shades and use them together, is also doing your makeup every single day, or do your makeup consistently and use your shades consistently. So for me, I do my makeup almost every single day. There's times on the weekend sometimes when I'm a bit hungover and I just don't want to do my makeup, and I don't do it then. There's also times when I'm not feeling good and I just really don't want to like go do my makeup. I just want to spend my whole day on the sofa just chilling out. I don't do my makeup on those days either, but every day for work, every day like when I'm filming obviously on the weekend, and like even if I'm just sitting at home not doing anything, for me it's almost like a relaxation thing, and I really enjoy my alone time. It's like my pampering session to do my makeup, so I do it almost every single day, and even sometimes I do it twice a day. That doesn't happen very often, but it's mainly if I have been working and then I'm going out in the evening. I like kind of refreshing. Sometimes I used to redo my eyeshadows or kind of my face, depending on what it looks like and what I'm doing. But I like doing that, so I do get a lot of use out of my eyeshadows that way, and it means that I also overall use a lot of my products. Secondly, using your eyeshadows that you're panning consistently. For example, this year I'm trying to pan on 100 eyeshadows, which is a very ambitious goal. But in order to kind of hit that goal, or have an even chance of hitting that goal, I have mainly exclusively used eyeshadows that I'm trying to pan on. Obviously here and there I use other shades. Like even for example right now I have rolled in a prompt in my Roulette Pan collab where I'm trying to use 10 different of my clear eyeshadows just to kind of get to know the formula, and also for special occasions I reach for other things. If I just want to reach for other things, I reach for other things, but I would probably say 9 times out of 10, if not more, I do only reach for eyeshadows I'm trying to pan, and obviously again that will mean that you can hit pan on things quicker because you are using them more. And then I would say the last tip that I have to give is more kind of so to help you hit pan on things that might be a bit intimidating to you. For example, bright shades. If you for example have a really bright eyeshadow in a project, currently for example I have a bright blue eyeshadow that might not be something, I don't even use that on an everyday basis. I sometimes do on my lower lash line, something like that. I have used it on my lid as well for work but even then I feel like that's a bit over the top for me. So a tip that I've started doing lots recently actually is layering shades or kind of mixing shades. So for example, one thing that I found is if you have like a blue or like a turquoise, like a light kind of blue, mixing that with an orange, like a really bright orange, makes a beautiful kind of cool toned but still like very neutral, basically bronzy shade. So mixing 2 opposite colors, so obviously blue turquoise with an orange, they kind of opposite on the color wheel, they will make more of a neutral shade mixed together. So it's something that I would really recommend if you're struggling with randomized shades that you get. So for example really bright shades, or you're just trying to use up a bright eyeshadow and you don't know how to incorporate it, and maybe right now you're only using it like once, twice a month because you don't know how to incorporate it into your everyday looks. But try mixing it with a color that is opposite. I've done that with other things as well, but that's just an example that comes to head right now. I also currently have a like kind of army green shimmer that is neutral enough for me to wear on its own, but I just want a bit more variety. And I also have kind of like a rose gold shimmer. Those two together also makes a really beautiful, almost like taupey greeny shade. It's beautiful, so maybe try mixing your eyeshadows. This works for me best for shimmers, but you can also do it with mattes. For mattes I would probably pack on one of the shades first and then kind of blend out with other shade. You could also, I haven't tried this myself, but you could also I guess go back and forth, but for me it works best patting it on, similar to what I did today, kind of patting it on and then blending the shade over to the top. That works best for me specifically, but it doesn't always work as well as it does for shimmers, but definitely for shimmers I would recommend this tip, and it's something, like I said, that I do a lot. I don't do looks like this on an everyday basis. I definitely don't, and these shades are all of things that I'm panning at the moment, so it might be a bit difficult to reach for on an everyday, but I do mix them, like I said, with other shades just to tone them down and make them more wearable. So I think those are all the tips that I have today. I really, like I said, hope I didn't miss anything, but I think I covered everything that I wanted to cover. Please let me know if I gave you any tips that you haven't thought about yourself, and if this video was helpful at all. But otherwise, I really hope you're having a lovely day, and I will catch you in my next one. Bye guys!